Is AI replacing developers? Now data suggests otherwise. All right, so two things are probably going to happen in this article. One, this article is written by GitHub, which makes me just assume that this is going to be an advertisement for Copilot. But I just want you to think about something, which is why, if you're wondering why I have not been freaked out about the AI revolution, is there's never been a time in history in which humans can do more, and afterwards there's just less availability for jobs when it comes to programming. Other things, yes, but when it comes to programming, it seems like every time we increase our velocity, you just increase the amount of bugs and nonsense and difficulty, and all of a sudden this number keeps going up, and we just keep on going up and up and up and up and up. And so I'm not worried at all, and I'm not shocked by this title at all, but I also think that GitHub really would like to sell more Copilots. Let's see what it has to say. Remember when people feared AI would create fewer developers over time? Do you think they wrote this article before or after O3 was announced? No. The reality as revealed by the 2024's Octoverse report is quite the opposite. AI isn't here to take your job. It's here to amplify your impact. This newsletter will explore the results of the report, showing how AI is shaping the future of software development. Whether you're a seasoned coder or just starting out, there's one clear takeaway here. AI is making developers more efficient, creative, and indispensable than ever before. Let's go. Oh, look at this. The report starts off with the same, pretty much the same thing right here. All right, so I'm going to look at the report a little bit more because I think the report probably is going to be a bit more interesting, though the article might be a little bit more to the point. Let's hop back and forth between the two. In 2024, Python overtook JavaScript as the most popular language on GitHub, while Jupyter Notebooks skyrocketed. To be fair, so I don't know if you saw this graphic, I believe they had TypeScript and JavaScript split. I think they probably just deserve to be under the same family, honestly. Like, if you're going to measure most popular language, you should probably just put them under the same category. And if that's the case, then I believe TypeScript and Python or TypeScript and JavaScript is more popular than Python. It's kind of like splitting Python and like Python 2 versus Python 3. It'd be a little bit weird to do that. Both of which underscore the surge in data science and machine learning on GitHub. We also see increased interest in AI agents and smaller models that require less computational power, reflecting a shift across the industry as more people focus on new use cases for AI. Word Calculator is fun to play with. Our data shows a lot more people are joining the global developer community. In the past year, more developers joined GitHub and engaged with open source and public projects, in some cases empowered by AI. Empowered by AI advertisement. And since tools like GitHub Copilot started going mainstream in early 2023, the number of developers on GitHub has rapidly grown with significant gains in the global south. Wow, we see signals that AI is driving interest in software development. We can't fully explain the surge in global growth our data reflects. I think that's probably true. Like, imagine you're just starting out programming, and with a few calls, you could make a product that does so much with like AI, even though it may not be accurate to what it does just does a lot of things, right? And I think that is probably very exciting, because I remember when I was a kid, the thing that got me exciting was going on and being able to make like small changes and seeing it happen in a game, right? A game that allowed programming was so exciting to me, and I loved it. So I would imagine the same thing's probably true with AI, where not only when you enter, you don't have to figure it out all by yourself. You have something that can spit out all the tutorials you've ever wanted, but B, it actually just does funny things. Right? Like, you can just like show a picture of a chessboard and be like, what's the next move? And maybe it makes it up 40% of the time, but nonetheless, it still can like do something, which just feels wild. Like, that's just a crazy experience to have. Right? You still need to know what you're doing to some extent. Oh no, I would argue that you need to know what you're doing to a full extent, but toy applications you can get by. That's why, like when they revealed O3, this big thinking model, what did they do? Did they show you a massive application where it's able to fix something in a giant code repository and able to actually be a very productive citizen? Or B, did it actually just simply produce yet another tutorial project? It produced another tutorial project because it knows it can ace that. They know that if you want the AI to do the simple stuff, it's going to do it well. They literally said, start me a project that makes a call out to an API and then writes the output to a file. That's not a crazy project, right? I'm not over here being like, holy cow, a wizard has entered the building, right? Hold on, everybody. Wizards are entering the building now, right? That's like 10 minutes of work. It's like not crazy worth of work, right? So the more you know, I think the better, honestly, the better you'll be. Okay, at GitHub, we know the critical role open source plays in bridging early experimentation and widespread adoption. In this year's Octoverse report, we'll explore how AI and a rapidly growing global developer community are coming together with compounding results. All right, 518 million total projects on GitHub with 25% year-over-year growth. I don't think that's surprising in the sense that Git has obviously reached like a critical mass adoption where almost everybody uses Git, right? Like it's probably the most ubiquitous piece of software that anybody uses, because I don't use VS Code. Some of you don't use Vim. Other people use, Zed. Some people use IntelliJ, but almost every developer has some sort of interaction/intersection with GitHub at some time. And so it's not surprising that you still see huge amount of project growth on GitHub. Because if any of us start a project, plus all the new people coming in, it's just such a huge number. And by the way, starting a project, this is kind of a silly measurement because, how many projects do you abandon in a year? Quite a few. Contributions to all projects on GitHub, 5.2 billion. That's crazy. Open source maintainers, verified students, and teachers have used GitHub Copilot at no cost, greater than 1 million. I get it for free. I haven't used it in like 6 months, but I still get it for free. Contributions to public and open source projects in 2024, 1 billion. Publicly generated AI projects with 98% year-over-year growth. Wait, public generative AI projects with 98% year-over-year growth. Also, not shocking. Python overtakes JavaScript as #1 language. Cool. Okay, cool. Not a shocker either. Yeah, it shouldn't be a shocker just because Python has access to all the AI stuff, and AI is so hot right now. AI is the Hansel of programming. All right, surge in global generative AI activity. AI is growing and evolving fast, and developers globally are going far beyond code generation with today's tools and models. While the United States leads in contributions to generative AI projects on GitHub, we see more absolute activity outside the U.S. In 2024, there was a 59% surge in the number of contributions to generative AI projects on GitHub, and 98% increase in the number of projects overall. And many of those contributions came from places like India, Germany, Japan, and Singapore. I think one thing that's really interesting about AI is that any of the cutting edge models or any of the cutting edge programs like Devin, you've effectively priced out a huge amount of locations. $500 a month. In some locations around the earth, that's near a salary for an engineer. So it's like you've already priced out that group. And for Devin to become useful for someone to be able to use in a lot of part of the world, they can't have 62.5 hours a month for $500, right? Like for me to want to use Devin in a realistic way, I would not only need to be able to my company would not only allow me to use it, which they're probably not going to allow me to use it, but if they did allow me to use it, I'd have to be able to use it for 800 to 1,600 hours a month for it to be useful, because I need to be able to have 4 Devins running. When I go to bed, I would expect all 4 of them to be able to be doing something, right? Can I actually make it run and actually be useful? So it's you have a huge problem. In my country, 500 is a good salary. Exactly. It's pricing people out. The new ChatGPT stuff, the new O1 access and the Sora access is $200 a month. That's a lot. That's a lot of money in a lot of places. And so it actually causes real price outs. So is it surprising that the U.S. leads in the projects? Not at all. And that's just because of the economics. The communities are growing, but I think there's definitely there's an income distribution problem when it comes to that. $200 is what I pay for rent. Well, you can also pay for rent on the internet if you'd like to. I've already seen this stuff. I've already seen all these things. Don't worry. I understand that O1 can't count fingers. Remember, it's an approximation model, right? This is what generative AI does, is it's function approximation. And so if it's pretty much a hand, it's a hand. How many pictures are drawn where there's 4 fingers on a hand? That's like most cartoons. So why wouldn't 6 fingers also be a hand? It's not a big deal. All right. Rapidly growing number of developers worldwide, especially in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. Notable growth is occurring in India, which is expected to have the world's largest developer population on GitHub in 2028. Wow, that's a cool number. Also a crazy number. Well, hey, hats off to you, India, as well as across Africa and Latin America. We also see Brazil's developer community growing fast. Did I just see a Brazil mentioned? Can we get a Brazil mentioned? Some of the attributable, let's see, some of this is attributable to students. The GitHub education program, for instance, has more than 7 million verified participants. By the way, I do think that the GitHub education, when it comes to Copilot access, I think is really dangerous. By the way, Brazil mentioned. People love Brazil. We've also seen 100% year-over-year growth among students, teachers, and open source maintainers adopting GitHub Copilot as part of our complementary access program. I really think that if you're a student, please, I'm begging you. I know it doesn't sound, I'm sure there's AI maximalists that will say I'm incorrect on these kind of things. I beg you, do not use Copilot. I beg you. Use ChatGPT and ask it questions about what you're doing wrong and go look up the answers and go read. Always ask for links and go read from the source itself. Learn to fish for yourself, and then if you just choose that you're not a big fan of fishing, turn on Copilot, okay? Some people, they just don't want to fish. And hey, you know what? You don't need to produce artisanal code. You don't. You do not have to produce artisanal, handcrafted, free-range, grass-fed, vegan-friendly, keto, meat diet only code. You just don't have to, but you should know how to do that. And if you don't know how to do that, you need to take some time to go learn how to do that. If you don't, I'm telling you, it's just going to cause all these slowdowns and all these problems. There's like this classic phrase that a lot of people don't know, or they do know, they just don't apply to the most obvious things in life, which is that shortcuts make long delays. I believe Mary from Lord of the Rings, Mary or Pippin, I always forget which one. I want to say it's Mary. Say this. And of course, they take a shortcut, cause a long delay. You don't need to shortcut your education. Just learn how to do it. There you go. And move on. This suggests AI isn't just helping more people learn to write code or build software faster. It's also attracting and helping more people become developers. First-time open source contributors continue to show wide-scale interest in AI projects, but we aren't seeing signs that AI has hurt open source with low-quality contributions. I think that's untrue. I think they are sniffing their own farts on this one. And what I mean by that is that there's that really interesting study not too long ago that showed that the average change in a line used to be once every 6 months and is now like every 3 weeks since the advent of generative AI. So it was like every 6 months a line of code would change. Now it's like every 3 weeks. And that's just simply because in the oldie days, back when we used to have to artisanally handcraft our code, you couldn't just like rewrite whole swaths of it super fast. Now it's like, oh, I can just rewrite it. Like I don't have to learn how you did it. Instead, I can just rewrite it. And that causes code churn. Yeah. I believe they aren't seeing a worsening. All the maintainers are seeing it, though. Yeah. I have also heard a lot of people talk from a maintainer's perspective. There's been a lot of articles that I've read about low-quality bug tickets, low-quality contributions, poor communications. They end up being LLMs. Security. I hear security issues have just been inundated with the most low-quality crap research that actually feels I feel genuinely bad. And so we kind of coined up a term called, it's a denial of attention attack, where you're able to effectively steal and siphon away all the maintainers' ability to actually pay attention to the issues. And then it kind of creates low quality software by accident, right? Python is now the most used language on GitHub as a global open source activity, continues to extend beyond traditional software development. Again, I believe this is just a manufactured stat in the sense that they wanted to make it so that AI is actually growing that much that Python becomes number one, but they also separate JavaScript from TypeScript, which just feels, we saw Python emerge for the first time as the most useful language on GitHub, or the most used language on GitHub. Forgive my misread there. More on that later. Python is used heavily across machine learning, data science, scientific computing, hobbyist, and home automation fields, among others. The rise in Python usage correlates with large communities of people joining the open source community from across the STEM world rather than traditional community of software developers. This year, we also saw 92%. I wonder how they get that. This has to be from education, where they're just getting like, okay, you're a student. What are you studying? Oh, you're a nurse. Therefore, you're part of the STEM. You're not that. Okay, I mean, that must be what they're saying. Because I don't know how you do that outside of the student area. Are they counting forks? I'm not sure. That's a good question. They don't tell us how they're counting things. I assume forks do count. This could indicate people in data science, AI, machine learning, and academia increasingly use GitHub. Systems programming languages like Rust are also on the rise, even as Python, JavaScript, TypeScript, and Java remain the most widely used languages on GitHub. Also, none of that should be surprising. All right, let's read some more. Global community of developers are growing fast. 5.2 billion contributions. Didn't they already say that? Yeah, they already said it right there. Restating one. Let's see, has the fastest growing developer population. India. New repositories in 2024, 108 million. Wow. That's a lot of dead code. And I also am curious what they mean by new repositories. I wonder if they also count forks, because forks are a new repository. Regarding the Indian dev population being large on GitHub, isn't this also due to the decision a few months ago when we learned that Indian developers create GitHub accounts and pull requests because teachers are telling them that it increases their chances of getting a job, which is a bit artificial? Yeah, there was that. I'm not sure if that plays. I don't know if that plays a role into this, but that was a thing where there was some teaching videos on YouTube showing to make issues on real GitHub accounts and all. There's a lot of that, right? I don't think that their impact is that big. All right. Geographical heat map of developer population around the world. Oh, interesting. Okay, so it is really just India, United States. Secondary, you start seeing China. Tertiary, you start seeing Russia and what appears, I assume we're looking at Germany, France, Spain, Poland maybe. Kind of hard from that one. And then what do we got? Brazil mentioned? Are they doing Brazil mentioned? Yeah, dude. Also Sri Lanka, totally not allowed in this group. RIP Sri Lanka, not being a part of the studying group here. Hewa. All right. There's both stability and change among the top 20 countries with the highest number of developers on GitHub. While India continues to approach the number one spot, we now predict by 2028, based on the updated projections, more below. The United States continues to have the most developers worldwide on GitHub. Despite this, we have seen greater growth outside the U.S. every year since 2013, and that trend has sped up over time. Okay, so India is now number 2. China not number 1. Oh my gosh. It's kind of interesting seeing Brazil also climb up really fast. That's pretty cool. Cries in Austria. Yeah, I'm sorry. China, 3rd place. China, number 3. Globally, we see developer communities growing significantly. Brazil, India, and Nigeria are especially growing fast, which is notable given that they are the most populous regions in their respective continents with linguistically diverse populations. I'm also curious about AI usage, right? Because this whole thing has been this AI usage business. By the way, I love that France just stopped being number 1. France died in 2020 and Indonesia kicked them out. Indonesia kicked out France. But because, this whole article is kind of gearing things towards AI, but they're also saying these countries right here. And I'm curious because I assume that $500 a month is a decent amount of money in Brazil, considering minimum wage is right around 200 United States Federal Reserve notes. So that would be a pretty decent amount of money, one would assume. Like 6x, yeah. It's a pretty decent amount of money. Overall, the top 20 country developer communities have largely maintained their positions with a few notable exceptions. These include Philippines overtaking Australia and Pakistan overtaking Poland. Stay smart. The rise of these non-English high population regions is notable given that it is happening at the same time as their proliferation of generative AI tools, which are increasingly enabling developers to engage with code in their natural language. Oh, interesting. Yeah. I have a quick question. Does anyone know the English-speaking proportion of India? I always thought that India was pretty well versed in English. That could be just like my ignorant center of the universe. People are saying like 60s, 70s, 0, -420, safe bet, very high. English is taught in every state school, right? 69.420%. Depends on the region, yeah. So it is interesting, though. Projecting the top 10 developer communities on GitHub through 2030. To identify the communities with the highest growth potential over the next 5 years, we created a predictions based on the current trends, and our predictions from the last year have changed. India is now on track to surpass the United States in number of developers by 2028. Interesting. I guess the real big question is going to be, is AI actually killing jobs or not? Because if AI is killing jobs, I assume that in the next few years, this chart changes drastically. I also think it's an interesting kind of measurement, just generally speaking, to say this is where the people are from who are creating stuff on GitHub. It's kind of an interesting measurement. I'm going to switch back to the other article because I want to see where they're getting this idea that AI replacing developers. Where are they getting this? Because right now, the only thing I'm seeing is that they're saying, the Octoverse is saying that there's a lot of new developers. That doesn't mean that AI is not killing jobs or replacing developers. That just simply says that there's a lot of people getting involved in programming. So I'm curious what they mean by that. All right, so let's look at this thing. AI is accelerating the developer community. AI sparks significant growth in the global developer community this past year with more contributors than ever joining GitHub. Yep, okay, this is just suggesting more people are joining GitHub. AI isn't replacing us. Instead, this year's Octoverse shows evidence that it's nurturing a dynamic, diverse community, transforming how we learn, build, and collaborate. I think that they're taking the wrong statistic out of here. Like, you know me, I'm all for AI not taking our jobs, but I'm just saying that I don't think that an increased amount of people using GitHub is proof positive that AI is making a dent either direction. I think the promise of economic freedom in a world where we have been economically depressed over the last 4 years with just all the stuff that's happened, I think that makes way more sense as an argument than it does like, AI was created, right? It's just like, I'm not really purchasing that as the argument. I think the opportunity of economic freedom is more appealing. AI needs more use cases in other domains than just coding. Well, AI has a lot of use cases. It's just, they're all just 80% accurate, right? Let's see, they're trying to say that they're being empowered, not being reduced, but they're only looking at the first part. Yeah, they're only looking at the first part. Well, again, I do not think you can even make that suggestion. Perhaps AI is going to make it easier for people to create an account, and maybe that's just what happened. Maybe a whole bunch of people created an account, played with AI for a moment, and then that was that, and then they haven't gone back. Like, we actually don't even know the long-term ramifications by any of this. All right, actionable insights to take away. 1, leverage AI for routine tasks so you can focus on bigger creative stuff. This is the classic one. AI tools like GitHub Copilot reduce time spent on repetitive tasks, according to the report. Tools like GitHub Copilot. Crazy that GitHub Copilot is mentioned so much in a report. I wonder why that would happen. Geez, it's almost like this was slightly an advertisement. GitHub can slash vulnerability fixing time from 1.5 hours to just 28 minutes. Anytime you see these, by the way, anytime you see this, I just want you to just remember that when you see someone put an exact amount of minutes on how long it takes to do something, I just want you to just pretend that it doesn't exist. Okay, that's it. The most healthy thing for you to do is to just believe that you never even read it and just walk away, because that is crazy take. Because you know what happens, right? For those that don't know what's happening right here, what they're going to do is they're going to probably take 200 developers or some small amount. They're going to take a very small or medium-sized code base of something, like some isolated thing. They're going to give a bunch of developers who don't know the code base, who aren't a part of anything, and then they're going to hand them this code base, and they're going to say, okay, half of you get Copilot, and so that's probably half of them that already use Copilot, so they're like, oh, I can move quickly. And then they're going to take the other half and say, you can't use Copilot or any AIs, and they're like, well, we already use AI, so we have to stop, and they're like, yes, you have to stop, and now go. And so they're going to be in this whole new environment in which they're not used to operating in because they've become dependent on the AIs. Then you have a bunch of people who are dependent on the AIs being able to use AIs, and then they measure the differences between these two people on a brand new code base with some sort of problem, and then they're like, oh, look at that. These 200 developers, that's it. That's all we measured. Clearly that means a Copilot will make you 3 times more efficient, because that's how this works. That's how programming works. That's how studies work. It's a completely fair experiment to me. Shut up. Makes sense, yep. Integrate smaller, flexible AI models into your projects. Developers are increasingly working with smaller LLM models, like Select Llama model from Meta, tailored for specific tasks that require lower compute. Explore projects like Ollama and learn how to incorporate compact, adaptable AI models into your own work. I actually think this is good advice, by the way. I think there's probably something here that could be really useful in the sense that, like when I was at Netflix, having to work with a lot of internal tools, there were pages of documentation that said a lot of things without saying a lot of things. And so it could be very useful to be able to train these like specific models that are offline on some internal documents. And so that way you kind of have this like really hyper specific thing to be able to help you with just navigating the internals of a company that's really large. I could see that being actually a really good idea. And then you don't have to get buy-in because you're not like handing all your data out to some cloud provider instead of it's some offline items. So that means the docs are bad. It's not that the docs are bad. They're just very verbose. And when you have a bunch of verbose of every kind of doc and you have 900 different projects you have to go through, you eventually have like 10,000 pages to be able to do something very small. It's very difficult, right? When working with AI, try Python. Yeah, that seems reasonable. You should just use Python. We're all in this together. Oh, here we go. Inspirational moments. Everyone hold hands. The Octoverse reports highlights a powerful truth. The AI revolution has space for everyone, from driving open source innovation in Nigeria to scaling AI startups in Brazil or spearheading generative AI adoption in South Korea. Developers worldwide are reshaping the future of technology. Together, we are redefining what it means to be a developer. I'm not sure what that means. And building technology that powers the world. To be fair, it's never been easier to be a developer. It's never been easier to get a website up. It's never been easier today to get a website up than ever. It's absolutely true. It doesn't mean it's great. It just means that that's what the world is. But it also becomes exceptionally difficult to do something beyond that, right? We have fully optimized the entry curve because that's where everybody's coming in at, and you can see it. You can kind of see it. All right, what's our next steps? AI has opened the doors for developers to push the limits of what's possible. The question is now, how will you take advantage of this new superpower? I think this article, though I would love it to be true, I think the data that they're showing is just not a good indication whether that's true or not. Honestly, I just don't think that. I do not think you can drive this. This is one of those things that I think people really need to learn how to do. Is you really need to learn how to argue about what data means. And to be able to simply see that stuff is growing and it's growing in AI, therefore AI is not going to replace us. Like, you can't even make that leap, right? That's not a leap one can make with that data. The data just simply suggests that AI has sparked a bunch of people to be curious about it and want to interact with it. Now, what's the ending thing that's going to happen? Will it fizzle out? Will it become fantastic? Is it a big cultural moment, or is it going to just be something that kind of goes back down, the hype cycle ends, and then it fits into a niche? We don't actually know yet, and this doesn't help us at all making one decision or the other than it shows that a lot of people have heard about it, and a lot of people are excited about it. We're in the hype cycle is what it tells me. We're just hype cycling right now. Now, maybe in 6 months we can come back to this and see what has happened, and maybe that will be a bit better. Maybe it's a big hype cycle. Maybe it's not a big hype cycle. Maybe it's actually really amazing. I just don't know. And I don't think anyone else can know. And I do not think that these stats give you any reason to know. They look at something and assume reasons, basically. Yeah, I mean, this is just classic. Jacob Sullivan, what does he have to say? By the time LLMs can replace developers, they will also be able to replace managers, accountants, HR executives, entire companies, product lines. There are going to be tons of code bases out there that need fixing in the next couple of decades due to some guy thinking he could replace a senior developer with an LLM. This is really what's going to happen by far. Honestly, like, to be completely fair, I think things like Scrum managers, Scrum masters, Scrum mainers, I think some level of product, I think definitely some level of managerial stuff, some level of HR will definitely get replaced by AIs much sooner than developers. I think tribal knowledge and the ability to actually work with large legacy code bases is going to be a very valuable skill to have. And I can kind of give you really good reasons why, and a lot of people are going to be like, well, haven't you seen O3? And we can talk about the reasons with O3. I'm going to make a specific video on O3 still. I haven't made that video yet, but that's going to come out later. The short and skinny of it is it's effectively untenable. So here, check this out. O3 energy cost. This is just like crazy. O3 open AI. I know it was on LinkedIn. Someone broke down their guess as to what it cost. It was approximately 5 gallons of gasoline per task solved on the ARC test. So solving this thing, or attempting to solve this thing right here, took 5 gallons of gasoline for O3. Like, that's a lot of energy. Like, when you think about it, that's a lot of energy. Oh, there it is. It looks like I missed it. Yeah. So someone is saying, I don't know, this may not be true, by the way. They may be overinflating their numbers. They might be underinflating their numbers. You don't actually know, because there's also, I mean, think about all the inefficiencies when you're only calculating something with respect to a single like data point. It may not be that great, but effectively just something like this. That can't be right. Oh, well, it actually can be right, because if you look at this top part right up here, you'll notice that for OpenAI high compute model, it took 5.7 billion tokens to compute something. That's like a lot of processing. Just whether you like it or not, that's just a whole ass amount of processing. 5.7 billion, anything in a language that's more complex than adding a number together, takes a long ass time. Takes a lot of compute and a lot of power to do, right? Just anything takes a lot of time. So what does GPT stands for? Gallons per task? It stands for gallons per task. Oh, interesting. Is that some sort of thing? Yeah. And do you see that Meta is building a nuclear reactor for their AI energy needs? Yeah, not surprising. AI is going to become the single greatest walled garden of all time because you're not going to be no regular company is going to be able to create these things because they're going to be entirely too expensive for any non-super trillionaire company to create. It's interesting. I'm not going to... I don't know what to do with all this information. It's just very interesting. So there you go. That's like, I think, a very easy and understandable thing to see that right now in our world, it requires a lot of effort for these things to actually do something. There does exist a world, though. I mean, right? One could imagine there exists a world where we make these things 10,000 times more efficient, and then it will be democratized and all that. But right now, like if everybody decided to start using O3 on even low compute, there's not enough hardware in the universe right now to be able to do that. So it's just like, that's not even a possibility, right? It's not even a thing you could do right now. Anyways, the name is the PrimeGen. Stupid article. Should not have taken such leaps on the data. I really would love to see these companies, especially GitHub, stop doing these estimates where they misrepresent data. I think it'd be really, really good. And I think it'd make it a lot easier to believe people when they say things if they quit constantly misrepresenting data like that. I think we can all agree that the data just simply doesn't suggest one way or the other. The data just simply points to the fact that people are excited. Fair and fair, right? Stop clicking on them. No, I think it's even better to click on them and then call out specifically that they're being bad with data, right? I think that's better because you know what? 100,000 people are going to see me read this article, whereas only 10,000 people will probably click on this other than me, right? Like, I mean, that's just what's going to happen. So it's going to be good, right? So people can see, okay, GitHub is manipulating the situation into making you believe that you should be using GitHub Copilot as fast as possible. And if you're not using that, you're actually falling behind. The global community is using it. Why aren't you using it? You should already know this. Like, if you don't do this, then you're falling behind. What are you going to do with those superhuman powers? I guess only superhuman powers with superhuman people get to do that, right? Like, no, it's good to be like, hey, this is actually kind of crappy. Here's the reasons why. And then inevitably, when your boss comes in and says, hey, did you know that this is happening? You can say, okay, hold on. I don't think the data suggests it. I think that it's being a bit manipulative in this. Let's just move on. Bada bing, bada boom. We can all, it's good to not be manipulated by data. Jen, that was a long outro. Holy cow.